Hello friends of the Tom Photo channel and the new viewers alike. In this episode, I'd like to go back in time, all the way to the late 80s, and tell you how the simplest of cameras, Smena 8M, brought me to photography. How it started something that has only grown with time. This is my personal story. I'm hoping it might interest you because many of you may have similar stories to tell and can relate. Just like me, you probably have an old camera to show that opened the photography chapter for you. And I'd be most interested in hearing about it in the comments if you have time and desire to share. So it started in the late 80s when I was about 12 years old. Back then there was no internet, no real computer games to speak of, no super cool TV series for kids, nothing that keeps most youngsters busy today. Well, if it's a good thing or bad is a separate topic. Kids my age rode bicycles and collected stamps. Cool kids had pre-owned tape recorders or rusty mopeds, and this was about it. You had much less to choose from than we have today, and photography stood out much more back then. It was cool because only people who had skill could produce real photos. You didn't just need a camera, but also film to put in it. And you needed to be able to handle fully manual mode as your only option. And that was only half of the story. The real mountain to climb was to work in the dark room with chemicals and photo enlargers and photo paper. It was magic. I still remember when I first walked out of the dark room with a real photo. The sense of achievement was something else. My dad, uncle and granddad could all photograph because they were all technically inclined and owned leather case packaged heavy shiny all metal cameras that were said to be very expensive and delicate. They wouldn't consider letting me join their circle. Although they never said it, I was clearly too young for such a fine activity and had to wait until more advanced age. Only one of my peers, a classmate, had once tried photography, but never made it past putting the film in the camera because always something unexpected happened. He told me to never try when I asked him. And I didn't try because I didn't know how to start. Maybe join a photography club at some hobby center? Well, probably not. I thought those people were there to refine their photography, not to get started. They would laugh at me. Then one day a relative gave me a book for birthday. Probably because he had run out of ideas and was time-pressed when choosing the present. The title read, "Photography? It's super easy." This was one birthday party I really wanted to end quickly so that I could start reading the book. The book broke down the essence of photography in the form of a dialogue where an uncle who is a professional photographer teaches his nephew the basics of photography. The boy had a Smena 8M and he learned to use it step by step, and I felt I could do it too. Now I had to get my hands on Smena 8M. It was the cheapest camera available, but it cost more than my pocket change could handle. I went looking at the camera at the store on most days after school and started to save money for it. One day I had it together and I went to the store after school like a boss, and I got it. Still, it turned out I had underestimated photography. It took me several rolls of film to get one into the camera the correct way and without exposing it to light before taking pictures. Then it took me some time to advance the frames so that the neighboring frames didn't overlap. The first several rolls never made it into the darkroom. The ones that eventually did came back blank for a while because something went wrong with the chemistry. You see, I didn't think it mattered too much how you make the solutions for film development. Then one day I had my first rolls of black and white film successfully developed. Small frames with images I could look at when holding the film against the light. For a long time this is where I stopped because I had no way to put them on paper, as I had no photo enlarger. That had to wait for well over a year before I managed to buy one used and established my own darkroom in the bathroom of my parents' home. Everyone had to wait in line until I was done with my important photo work. I was beginning to gain status. And I started to put out pictures, small and normal, sharp and blurry, regular and artistic. I was over the top of the highest obstacle and I was flying. Let me show you some of the most ancient pictures I took. These are photos of photos that I'm showing, so excuse the low quality. In today's terms, the quality was never there to begin with, of course. Additionally, the photos are crooked or rolled up because I was not sure how to dry them properly, and now it's too late to do anything about it. Most images were the size of a couple of small matchboxes because the materials were expensive for me. Some were larger too if I thought that they were more interesting. I started to make pictures I could be proud of, or so I thought. Anyway, let me now put the pictures back in the shoebox they came from and put the box back in the shelf under the stairs. I'll look at them again in a few years, or maybe my kids will look at them. I used my Smena 8M for many years, well into the time when I could afford better cameras, but I didn't want to change anything. I enjoyed the minimalistic approach. My gear had improved though. I had my dad's old flash for photographing in the dark. Instead of guessing the exposure, I inherited an exponometer from my grandpa. I could now measure light. This is a cool instrument where you set the film sensitivity and then point it in the same direction as your camera. And then you read the shutter speed and f-stop values off of the sliding wheels. The instrument still works. It's ancient, but it just keeps on going. And it's cased in a high quality leather. This was my professional gear back then. I looked cool checking it out before taking the pictures. But we still haven't talked about Smena 8M itself yet. I've only shown it to you in the background. The only fancy thing about it is the synthetic leather case that came with it. This made it look pro for me back in the day, and my friends thought so too. The Smena 8M is a small plastic camera. If you don't count the human hours, its production cost was probably very low, and thus was the price. I don't think a camera can be much simpler than this. That's where its charm is. You essentially have a plastic rectangular case with a lens attached. Everything is either manual or spring operated. Advancing the frames is manual, and let me tell you that it was very inaccurate because it always got stuck. Rewinding the film is manual too. You pull out the button, hold down the shutter release, and turn the knob to put the film back in the cassette. If you turn it too far, you will lose the end slip of the film to get hold of the film, so you had to be careful. The viewfinder is basically just a glass covered window in the frame that lets you point the camera in more or less a correct direction. We're very far off here from using it for composing the scene. No, all composition had to wait until darkroom and after when you cut your photo with scissors. You got lucky if you could somehow capture the main subject. The lens on Smena 8M is small and as simple as they come. Just one tiny lens in a hole. The camera isn't exactly a precision instrument either. There was a big variation between different units. Mine wasn't bad. You could change the f-stop between 4 and 16 by turning the plastic circle around the glass part of the lens. The shutter was spring operated. You first loaded the spring by pulling down the small lever and then you were ready to press release. The shutter speed could be controlled by turning the metal ring around the lens. Note that it had symbols with clouds to show what the best shutter speed was if you had the most common ISO film, which was probably around 32 or 64 back then. Focusing was done by just turning the lens. You could not confirm the focus visually in any way. It was all a guessing game. You just trusted the numbers. If your subject was roughly 8 meters away, you turned the lens to 8 meters. When we open the camera, we see a super simple 3-part shutter system. Let me show how it operates. It really is super basic, perfect for learning the very essence of photography. To this day, I believe there is beauty in simplicity. So that's been my story of getting into photography. I now use advanced cameras and also teach the others how to use all those advanced features. While this is happening, I still think back to my early photography days with nostalgia. I'm glad I had to walk all the way from the simplest system and black and white film to what I'm doing now. It makes me feel that the journey has been rather complete without skipping any important chapters. I hope you found something interesting in my video. Thank you very much for watching and doing the time traveling together with me. I hope to see you again in my future videos where I talk about photography related matters as usual. And keep in touch via the comments section below. Have a great day.